What if the heart of San Francisco hides its darkest truth? This is a raw descent into the Tenderloin, a place few dare to explore, where America's wealthiest city meets its most haunting failure. Here, the sidewalks are lined not with dreams, but with tents soaked in rain and desperation. The air is thick with decay. The cries of the mentally ill echo between graffiti-stained walls, and syringes glint beneath your feet. Just a few blocks from luxury condos and VC-funded cafes, another world exists, forgotten yet growing. In this gripping investigation, we expose the roots of a crisis, the lives it consumes, and the fight to reclaim humanity. Enter if you're ready. Number 1. The reality of homelessness in Tenderloin. Let's begin with the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. As of the year 2024, the official homeless count in San Francisco reached a staggering 8,323 individuals. But statistics alone barely scratch the surface. Nearly 52% of them, yes, more than half, aren't in shelters. They're surviving outdoors, on sidewalks, in rusting vans, beneath overpasses, inside makeshift tents, barely holding against the wind. Now, zoom in. Focus your lens on just one neighborhood, Tenderloin. Only about 50 city blocks, but within this small stretch lives close to 60% of the city's entire homeless population. That's roughly 3,000 people every single night, compressed into a dense, overstressed urban zone no bigger than a square mile. And what do you see when you walk through Tenderloin today? You see tents pressed shoulder to shoulder like dominoes, leaving no room for foot traffic, no room for dignity. Tarps flapping like wounded sails in the wind, shopping carts stuffed with everything someone owns, cardboard signs that read, "Just hungry, not hopeless," though hope seems more distant than ever. But the story doesn't end with what you see, it's what you smell. The air here is heavy, saturated with a mix of urine, sweat, rotting food, and something even darker. The burnt chemical sting of fentanyl clings to your nostrils, a smell that once identified means you'll never forget it. You hear too. The background track of Tenderloin is sirens, always sirens, distant screams, the occasional crashing bottle, and muffled weeping, sometimes from a child, sometimes from a grown man who simply can't take another day. This isn't just poverty, it's a collapse of basic humanity. How did it get this bad? Let's talk about living conditions. In Tenderloin, the homeless population density has reached a tipping point. Picture this. On a single sidewalk, you might pass dozens of tents, some only inches apart. There's no privacy, no sanitation, no safety. Many people use the sidewalk as both bedroom and bathroom public restrooms. Too few and often broken trash cans overflow. The ground is littered with used needles, and broken glass rats run freely through alleyways. Even more terrifying is what you don't see: diseases festering beneath untreated wounds, mental illnesses spiraling without support, addictions growing stronger in the absence of care. According to a 2025 City Health report, infectious disease outbreaks like hepatitis A and skin-borne infections have been rising by double digits year over year in this area. And yet these issues are often ignored unless they cross into more affluent zip codes. Let's not forget safety, or the lack of it. Tenderloin is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in San Francisco. In just the first quarter of 2025, police reported more than 300 violent incidents in the district, ranging from assaults to fatal overdoses. Drug dealers operate openly in broad daylight, selling pills and powders just feet from schools and daycare centers. Even residents who are not homeless live in fear. Parents walk their children to school flanked by security volunteers. Some buildings have metal gates not for style, but for survival. But here's the part we can't ignore. This isn't happening in some forgotten corner of America. This is happening in the heart of San Francisco, just minutes away from gleaming tech campuses, multi-million-dollar condos, Michelin-starred restaurants, the same city that houses billionaire CEOs, venture capital firms, and luxury brands also allows thousands to sleep in filth, fear, and isolation every night. And the truth? The contrast isn't just painful, it's grotesque. Because behind every tarp is a story. Behind every pair of tired eyes, there's a name, a past, a dream that didn't make it through the rent spike, or the mental health breakdown, or the opioid relapse. So when we talk about homelessness in Tenderloin, we're not just talking about numbers. We're talking about people caught in the teeth of a system that has chewed them up and spat them onto the pavement. And yet this is only the beginning. Because to truly understand what's happening here, we have to go deeper. Past the tense and the statistics, into the why, into the mechanisms that let a city of unimaginable wealth push its most vulnerable citizens to the edge and leave them there. In the next section, we uncover the root causes of this crisis: the broken housing market, the mental health failures, the gaps in public policy, and the consequences of treating human lives as just problems to be pushed from one block to the next. Number 2, root causes behind the crisis. To understand why Tenderloin looks the way it does in 2025, we have to stop treating homelessness like it's a mystery. This didn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of decades of choices, some made with good intentions, others driven by greed, fear, or simply indifference. Let's start with the biggest domino, the housing crisis. In San Francisco today, the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment has skyrocketed to more than $2,500 per month. That's just for a modest space, nothing fancy. To comfortably afford that rent, you'd need to make over $100,000 a year. But here's the twist. Many essential workers, like janitors, cooks, security guards, or even teachers, don't make anywhere near that. Not even close. And what happens when people can't keep up? They get pushed out, evicted, displaced, or worse, forced onto the streets. San Francisco has lost tens of thousands of rent-controlled units over the last 2 decades, replaced by sleek high-rises and luxury condos. Neighborhoods that once had sole working-class families, mom-and-pop shops, community ties have been transformed into investment portfolios for developers. The result: an entire segment of the population left with nowhere to go. Part of the blame lies with a movement known as NIMBYism, short for "not in my backyard." It sounds harmless, but it's powerful. These are the folks who fight tooth and nail against the construction of affordable housing in their neighborhoods. Their reason: it might lower property values or bring in the wrong kind of residents. The truth: their resistance has strangled any attempt to build at the scale we need to keep people housed. So we've got unaffordable rents disappearing, affordable units, and policies that block new solutions. That's not just a crisis, it's a system failure. But housing is only one side of the coin. Let's flip it over and talk about mental health and addiction, a storm that's been brewing silently for years and has now exploded in our faces. Picture this: a person on the street talking to themselves, shoeless, pacing back and forth. Maybe you've seen someone like that. Maybe you looked away. But what if I told you that 1 in 3 homeless individuals in San Francisco lives with a serious mental health condition? Disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe PTSD. And now add fentanyl to the equation. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, cheap to buy, deadly in micrograms, and highly addictive. In 2025 alone, more than 600 overdose deaths have been recorded in San Francisco, with Tenderloin as the epicenter. This drug doesn't play games. It shuts down breathing in seconds. It kills people sitting upright in doorways, on bus benches, even inside public bathrooms. But here's what hurts the most. Many of these deaths were preventable, because we don't just have an addiction crisis, we have a care crisis. The city's mental health system is overloaded, underfunded, and difficult to access. Rehab centers are full. Wait lists stretch for months. There are only a handful of mobile response teams, and they're spread thin, so people spiral, they relapse, they overdose, they die. And still somehow we're surprised. Then comes the third piece of this puzzle: the broken support system. If you think San Francisco doesn't spend money on homelessness, think again. In fact, in 2024, the city spent more than $700 million on homelessness programs. The problem isn't lack of funding, it's lack of coordination. Services are scattered. Some offer shelter, some offer food, some offer medical care, and others specialize in addiction treatment. But they don't talk to each other. They don't share data. They don't work as one. And often, the people who need help the most are the ones who fall through the cracks. Tenderloin has become what many now call a containment zone, a dumping ground where the city funnels, shelters clinics, soup kitchens, detox centers, and outreach offices. But instead of this being a place for healing, it's become a bottleneck, an overloaded hub, where thousands come for help and are met with long lines, burned-out staff, or come back next week. Imagine placing all your city's trauma and pain into a single neighborhood, expecting it to hold the weight of your failures. That's Tenderloin today. And still, people survive here, barely through community kitchens, through harm reduction vans handing out Narcan, through strangers looking out for strangers. But let's not sugarcoat it. The root causes of this crisis run deep from housing, that's out of reach to mental illness, untreated to systems designed to manage, not solve. What Tenderloin shows us is that homelessness is not just about lacking a home. It's about lacking safety, lacking care, lacking a society that says, you still matter. So where do we go from here? That's what we'll explore next. Because the good news, solutions do exist. People are fighting back, organizing, building alternatives. It's not easy, but hope is still alive. Number 3, solutions and ongoing efforts. Now that we've seen how deep the crisis runs, the question is what's being done about it. Because despite everything, despite the tents, the trauma, the overdose deaths, there are people fighting back. Every day on the streets, in city offices, inside old churches turned into shelters. They're not giving up, and neither should we. Let's start with the city itself. Back in early 2024, San Francisco launched a bold move called the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative. This was a 90-day campaign, part emergency response, part political gamble. The city brought in more police patrols, mobile health units, mental health workers, and outreach teams. The idea to clean up the area, but not just cosmetically. They aimed to connect people to real services, detox beds, housing vouchers, mental health care. And it had results, at least on paper. In the first 3 months, the initiative connected over 800 people to temporary shelter or treatment programs. Street conditions slightly improved, businesses reopened, foot traffic increased. But here's the catch. Many advocates said it felt more like pressure to disappear than a long-term solution. Critics argued that without permanent housing or follow-up support, people just got moved around, not truly helped. Still, it showed what coordinated action could look like if we're willing to go further. That's where the Tenderloin Linkage Center comes in. Located right in the heart of the neighborhood, this center is part welcome space, part crisis hub. People can walk in without judgment and find a hot meal, a clean bathroom, a medical checkup, or even just a moment of rest away from the chaos outside. From there, trained staff help guide them toward longer-term solutions. In 2025 alone, the center reported more than 25,000 individual visits, with thousands receiving referrals to shelter treatment or supportive services. But here's what's really important. It's not just the government doing the work. Some of the most impactful efforts come from nonprofit organizations, groups that have been here long before any city initiative and will be here long after the headlines fade. Take Compass Family Services, for example. For over 100 years, they've focused on helping families with children avoid or escape homelessness. And in a city where 1 in 30 public school students is now considered homeless, that mission has never been more urgent. In 2024 alone, Compass provided stable housing for over 2,000 families, offered trauma, counseling, job training, and even childcare, so parents could attend work or school. Then there's the Coalition on Homelessness. Less a service provider, more a movement. They don't just offer handouts, they fight for change. They organize protests, publish reports, challenge bad policy. Their work helped block evictions during the pandemic and continues to push for renters' rights, expanded shelter options, and dignified alternatives to criminalization. But maybe the most powerful force in Tenderloin doesn't come from government or nonprofits. It comes from the community itself. Because in the middle of everything, among the struggle, the pain, there are still people stepping up to protect each other. One standout example is Safe Passage. This grassroots group trains volunteers to literally walk children to school. Picture that grown adults forming protective walking lines like human shields, guiding kids past open-air drug deals and shouting matches, making sure they arrive safely and with dignity. So far, they've escorted more than 500 children every single week. Not because they have to, because they refuse to let fear win. And then there's Urban Alchemy, founded by formerly homeless and incarcerated individuals. This organization is turning the tide by flipping the script. They hire people with lived experience, folks who know what the streets are like, to become what they call street ambassadors. These are not guards, not enforcers. They're guides, peacemakers, mediators. They help de-escalate conflicts, clean up sidewalks, hand out water, and offer calm in the middle of chaos. Today, Urban Alchemy has over 300 street ambassadors across the city and dozens right here in Tenderloin. One of them, Marcus, told a local reporter, "When I was on the street, nobody saw me. Now I help others feel seen." That's healing. And he's right, because at the heart of every effective solution in Tenderloin is not just shelter, not just rehab, not just policy, it's human dignity. And while these efforts may not fix everything overnight, they represent the beginning of something better, a shift from containment to compassion, from managing people to walking with them. So yes, there are still challenges, plenty. But there's also proof. When we invest in people, not just programs, change is possible. Number 4, John's story, a life on the edge. Meet John. He is 40 years old, or at least that's what he thinks. On the streets, birthdays blur into survival. Days bleed into nights, and nights into more waiting for food, for safety, for something to change. Before everything collapsed, John was a skilled handyman. He fixed water heaters, repaired drywall, patched roofs. Whatever a homeowner needed, he could do it. He took pride in his work, often humming while sanding down old cabinets or rewiring a busted fuse box. A house, he used to say, just needs someone to care for it. But in 2020, when COVID swept through the city like a silent fire, John's phone stopped ringing. The gigs dried up, one by one, his clients canceled. With no work and no safety net, it didn't take long for his savings to run out. By the time the eviction notice came, all he had left was a toolbox, a sleeping bag, and a deep, hollow ache in his chest. By early 2021, John was living in a tent off Ellis Street, right in the heart of Tenderloin. He says the first few nights were the worst. The cold, the noise, the constant fear of being robbed, beaten, or worse. It's not just about sleeping rough, he told us. It's about sleeping scared. John tried city shelters a few times, but each time he came back, more anxious than before. They pack you in with 50 other people, all desperate, all broken. You can't close your eyes without worrying. Someone will take your shoes or your life. So he returned to his tent. At least there, he said, the danger felt familiar. Like so many others trapped in this cycle, John turned to fentanyl. At first, just a way to sleep, then to forget. Now it's a chain, a quiet killer that crept in with promises of warmth and escape. In 2025, San Francisco recorded more than 600 overdose deaths, and Tenderloin was at the epicenter. Fentanyl is everywhere. John says it costs less than a cup of coffee, but it costs you everything. Still, he hasn't given up. "I don't want this to be the end of my story," he says, eyes fixed on some far-off point just beyond the interview camera. "I want to get clean. I want to work again. I want to fix things." But wanting and having are two different things. He's been on the waiting list for a rehab bed for over 7 months. He's applied for low-income housing, but with more than 20,000 people in line, he says he might be dead before his number gets called. John is not an exception. He is the rule. He is one face among thousands, one story among the storm. And yet, despite everything, despite the trauma, the addiction, the endless bureaucracy, John still carries something fragile but fierce. Hope. Hope that the system will see him. Hope that maybe next week he'll get a call from the linkage center. Hope that he can pick up his toolbox again and say, "This house, this city, this life just needs someone to care. And that perhaps is the real tragedy and the real truth of Tenderloin. Because John's story doesn't just belong to him. It belongs to the thousands like him right now in tents and doorways across America. Number 5, a new direction for Tenderloin. We've seen the streets. We've met John. We've felt the weight of a crisis that's become too heavy for one neighborhood to carry alone. Now the question is, what do we do about it? Because if Tenderloin has shown us anything, it's this Band-Aids won't stop a flood. What we need now is transformation. And real lasting change begins with one radical idea. Give people a home first. Sounds simple, right? But this approach, known as housing first, is turning the old system on its head. Instead of forcing people to get sober before they qualify for housing. Instead of making them prove they're ready by jumping through endless hoops. We flip the script. We say you are a human being. You deserve a safe place to sleep right now. No conditions, no questions. Just 4 walls, a roof, and a locked door. And here's the kicker: it works. In Finland, where housing first has been the national policy since 2008, chronic homelessness has dropped by over 80%. And in cities across the United States like Salt Lake City and Houston, this model has reduced homelessness faster and cheaper than shelters, jails, or emergency rooms ever could. In San Francisco, where the average cost of keeping someone homeless through emergency services, police time, and hospital stays can top $80,000 per year, providing permanent supportive housing actually saves money in the long run. But here's the challenge. Housing is just step 1. Once people are off the streets, they still need support. Mental health counseling, job training, addiction treatment, social connection. And right now, too many of those services are clustered in one place. Tenderloin. That brings us to the second piece of the puzzle: spread the responsibility. Because it's not fair, it's not sustainable, and it's not working. One neighborhood cannot hold the trauma of an entire city. Imagine if every district in San Francisco took on a share of the work. If clinics, shelters, and support centers weren't just jammed into one zip code, but were spread throughout the city like libraries or schools. We could reduce stress on Tenderloin. We could help people in their own communities closer to the places they know and the people they trust. We could finally start treating homelessness like a shared problem, not a political hot potato tossed across city blocks. But even that's not enough. Because if we want real change, we have to listen to the people living it. That's where the third path forward begins: community-based solutions. Too often, policies are made in air-conditioned offices by people who've never missed a meal. But some of the smartest, boldest ideas come from folks on the ground, from people who've been there, who've survived, and who know what actually works. Take local co-ops, for example, where residents help run their own housing facilities, from cooking to cleaning to community rules, or small neighborhood cleanup crews teams made up of unhoused individuals who clean streets in exchange for food, clothing, or a safe place to sleep. These aren't charity models, they're dignity models, and they're already showing results in places like Oakland and Portland. By 2025, San Francisco had over 100 community-led pilot programs aimed at tackling homelessness with local voices at the helm. Many are still underfunded, overlooked, or stuck in bureaucracy, but when given the chance, they do something government rarely can build: trust. Because here's the thing. People don't just need services, they need agency. They need to be part of the solution. Not just recipients of aid, but partners in rebuilding their own futures. So what's next for Tenderloin? It could be more of the same. More tents. More deaths. More finger-pointing. Or it could be something different. It could be the place where change begins, where we stop punishing poverty and start preventing it, where we invest not in police sweeps, but in permanent homes, where we stop asking what's wrong with them and start asking what happened to them and how do we help. Tenderloin is more than just a neighborhood. It's a front line, a reflection, a warning. What's happening here isn't just San Francisco's burden, it's America's reckoning. A housing crisis, a public health emergency, a mental health collapse, and a test of how much we value justice and human dignity. The temporary fixes we've seen so far, they're not enough. They sweep the symptoms, but never touch the root. Real change means structural change. It means long-term investment in homes, in care, in people. Because if San Francisco truly wants to live up to its legacy as the Golden City, then it must do more than shine on postcards. It must shine where it matters most, in the places we've forgotten. Tenderloin doesn't have to be the place where dreams die. It can become the place where second chances begin, where hope, not just survival, is possible. If this story moved you or opened your eyes to a side of America we don't always see, consider leaving a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions, or even your own experiences. And if you'd like to join us on more journeys like this, real stories from real places, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary. There's a whole world waiting to be seen, and sometimes the most powerful stories are just a few blocks away.